Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Module 8. This module is going to be a little bit different because we will be practicing how to read and interpret primary sources rather than going through a lecture and having you take notes. So for this portion of the module, you'll just be watching along with this video as I do a practice source interpretation that you'll be doing on your assignment. So before we dive into our first practice letter together, I want to talk a little bit about just some general advice about reading primary sources. So reading and understanding primary sources is honestly one of the hardest things to do as a historian. But there's a lot of things that you can do to make it easier. And especially, the older the document is and the less you know about the context, the harder it is to understand. So we're working with documents that are pretty much going to be written in English that you're familiar with in terms of the time when it was written. But it helps a lot to interpret if you know a lot about the historical context. So the more facts you know about history, the easier it is going to be to understand. So this document, I'm just going to start off here by going through some general advice on reading primary sources, and then we'll read a practice letter that'll help prepare you for your assignment. So a helpful thing to do is to think about who wrote the document, because that can sort of help you to unpack what their motivations are and what they might say in the document. Along with that, thinking about who the intended audience is. So if you know that someone is writing from a certain political party and they're making a political speech, so they're talking to their, potential constituents or potential voters, they're going to be talking about issues that relate to those voters. They're going to make a lot of promises that might not come true, right? That's sort of like the context for a political speech. Or, in your assignment, you'll be listening to one of the first fireside chats talking about the banking crisis. So that FDR is going to want to comfort the American people, right? And that he's talking to the general audience. So that also goes along with the motivations of the author or document. So is it politically motivated, right? Is it a politician speaking and they want to fall in line with a certain political party and a political platform? Are they trying to convince someone of something? Or is it something where their guard is down, like a diary or a letter that's a little bit more personal? So that it's helpful to think through potential motivations. Read it out loud if you can, if you're struggling with the language. So a lot of times, if you read something out loud, it can make more sense to you to hear it in the natural sort of way we speak rather than reading it, especially if it's in older English. And then my biggest piece of advice is to read and interpret in stages. So don't read the whole thing and at the end say, okay, what did I just read? Because that can be very unmotivating because it's hard to read primary sources. So if you get through this huge chunk of text and at the end you say, okay, what did I just read? Odds are your answer is going to be, I have no idea what I just read, and you'll be more likely to give up. So I would say read a few sentences, read a little bit at a time, pause and say, okay, what did I just read? Maybe make a note, make an annotation, and then keep going, pause, think again, okay, what does that align with what I was just thinking? So stopping and asking questions along the way can be really helpful. If there's any confusing wording or anything that, you're unclear about, leave a note that you're confused about it, or leave any annotations or messages of what you are interpreting as you go. And if there's any like emotionally charged language or like real words that really stick out to you, circle or underline them. That can help you interpret as well. So as we get into this practice source, you'll see on your assignment, you'll have these same questions that are going to help you interpret the source before you write the conclusion for your assignment. So I'll go through this letter with you, and remember you're just watching for this video, and I'll fill out the chart as we go. So here we have, this is a transcripted letter. So this would have been a handwritten letter that someone published, typed out as after they found this letter, typed out and published it in a book. So you'll see there's a lot of things underlined here for, misspellings or improper grammar, and those are intentional because they were copied directly. So if you see things misspelled, that is on purpose, because they wanted to capture if there are misspellings, that is on purpose. So, if you haven't ever received an old school letter, we'll see our first question here is, who are they writing to? So you'll see in the upper left-hand corner, it says Mr. and Mrs. Roosevelt, Washington, D.C., it gives the date, and Dear Mr. President. So this one there's a little bit conflicting because it says Mr. and Mrs. Roosevelt and then Dear Mr. President. But since it says Dear Mr. President, I'm going to say specifically they're probably writing to FDR. So there is so Mr. President. Okay, and then where are they writing from? It says at the bottom, Chicago, Illinois. It says in the letter when we read it that they're from Chicago, Illinois. So Chicago, Illinois. All right, and then so for the rest of these questions, we want to actually dive into the letter. So I'm going to read and, like I said, pause and annotate as I go. So, Dear Mr. President, I am a boy of 12 years. I want to tell you about my family. My father hasn't worked for 5 months. He went plenty times to relief. He filled out application. They won't give us anything. I don't know why. Please, you do something. So I'm going to pause there because there's already some things that I'm picking up on. So he's saying my father hasn't worked for 5 months. So we know that that's in line with the pattern of unemployment in the Great Depression. Okay. So, and then what really intrigued me, he went plenty times relief. He filled out application. So he tried to get government relief, and it says in the next sentence, they won't give us anything. But were denied, right? So they haven't received any money for relief. And then please, you do something, right? I want to note that there's improper grammar here. And I'm going to connect that probably to that he's a 12-year-old boy. Right, so he's young, he's probably writing his first letter, and we know there's some improper grammar. So we haven't paid 4 months rent every day, and see, notice like it's the same sentence, but he capitalizes. Every day the landlord rings the bell. We don't open the door for him. We are afraid that we will be put out. Been put out before and don't want to happen again. So we have to kind of think through, what does it mean? They're not answering the door for the landlord. They've been put out. They've been out before. So to me, that's indicating they've been kicked out of their housing, right, or have been homeless before. They don't want it to happen again. We haven't paid the gas bill and the electric bill, haven't paid grocery bill for 3 months, because you could buy groceries on credit. My father goes to Lane Tech High School, so I'm going to assume that that's misspelled brother, as Google Docs wants us to think, right? He's 18 years old, hasn't gone to school for 2 weeks because he got no car fare. So the brother is out of school due to lack of funds, money. I have a sister, she's 20 years, she can't find work. So if you think back to some of our lectures, we've talked about how women put off getting married in the Depression. Because, right, typically a woman who is 20 would not have a job. She would just get married in American society. But that's not the case here. My father, he's staying home all the time. He's crying because he can't find work. I told him, "Why are you crying, Daddy?" And Daddy said, "Why shouldn't I cry when there is nothing in the house?" I feel sorry for him. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I wrote this letter to you in my room. We're American citizens and we're born in Chicago, Illinois, and I don't know why they don't help us. Please answer right away because we need it. We'll starve. Thank you. God bless you. So that was kind of a big chunk. So the father is upset because they have nothing in the house. And so the boy's solution is to write a letter to the president. And then he doesn't sign the letter. So it's from Anonymous. And so we can maybe think through maybe why he might not sign his name and like sort of the shame attached to asking for government assistance. But let's unpack some of these questions. So what are they asking for? What's the boy asking for in this letter? Essentially, right, he's boy is expressing how his family is to pay their bills, and the father and sister are out of work. He doesn't specifically ask for anything other than help, right? Please answer because we will starve. So it is asking for general relief so they can avoid starvation and homelessness, right? They said they haven't paid their bills. They might get kicked out of their house. So what type of language is used? That's in terms of, we talked about like the low level of grammar. It is clear that the letter is written by a young boy who also might be out of school because he said his brother can't go to school. So is written by a young boy with a low level of education. We can tell this based on the poor grammar used in the letter. So the tone of the letter, to me, it seems the overall tone of the letter is one of, I would say, desperation, because he is dependent on government assistance to help his family. It is also a sad letter because he talks about his dad crying. They have no possessions. Right, so that's just up to you and your opinion and whatever, sort of adjectives you can use to describe the words used in the letter and the tone. So that's up to you and the adjectives that you think of when you read the various letters in your assignment. So does anything strike you as weird, strange, or interesting? I would say this is pretty consistent with the historical content we know about, right? People out of work, can't pay their bills, facing homelessness. We talked about like how the young daughter is working rather than married. So I guess I would just say what's interesting is that struck me as interesting. I think it is interesting that the only thing the 12-year-old boy thinks to do is that is not thinks of to do is write a letter to the president to ask for help and money. Because, I, as a child, I don't think I would ever think to do that. So I think it shows how much the American people look to FDR to help them solve their problems. This young boy also seems to know about the government assistance programs and that FDR can help them with that, right, and receive relief. So I think that's interesting. But, it's up to you. Maybe the grammar surprised you, or the fact that brother couldn't go to school because of money, right? Like, where's the public bus system, public transportation? So those are other things you can add. So hopefully that was helpful for you to see me go through one of these sources. On your assignment, there's also going to be a source filled out for you. So hopefully you found that to be helpful. If you need any other additional help interpreting primary sources, no, it does take practice and it does take time, but you can always email me if you need any assistance or if anything is confusing. All right, thank you so much and good luck on your assignment.